Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I am thrilled to be here today with you hosting our show, Authentic Achievements with Kim Adele Randall. And today we are going to be discussing a topic that's very near and dear to me. I just taught a course last night, setting boundaries and asking permission. And today we're going to be talking about setting boundaries and balancing work at the holidays. And people are going crazy. People are overwhelmed. They're experiencing all kinds of emotions. Some people are ecstatic and they're happy. Other people are depressed. People are thinking, how am I going to get all these gifts? So we're going to explore this topic, and we thank you for being here with us, whether you're on the live or the replay. Please do go and subscribe to all of our channels across the social media platforms, as well as Amazon Fire, Roku, Zizzle, and E360 TV. Well, the star of our show, Kim Adele Randall, is in London in the United Kingdom, and she has developed her own platform, which is what this show is named after. The platform is Authentic Achievements. She's an expert when it comes to broadcasting, interviewing people, mentoring, coaching, and so many other areas. She's also an author. She's a TEDx speaker, and she's a mom. Let's welcome Kim to the show. Hello.
Hi, Dr. Jacqueline. It's so lovely to catch up with you.
So nice to see you as well. And we both have smiles on our faces, even though it's the holidays. I was just saying some people are really going out of their minds. And it's a difficult time of year for some, and it's a happy time of year for others. I always think if there are children involved, it's got to be happy and special. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I agree. It can kind of sometimes feel like a game of two halves, can't it? Because you know that like we're doing all of this running towards that one day, and then actually you get to take a breath and go and relax, and we're there. But there's so many things to juggle, and we, as you and I have both moved recently as well, so thrown that into the mix. I've been in my new house for this is coming up to the end of the third week, and you're kind of like, who does that? Decides to move this close to Christmas and kind of layer in trying to make a house a home and get ready for Christmas and balance the business, and I guess that's when we came up with today's title, which is whatever's going on in our world. We layer in the holidays and we layer in the pressure, and we forget to take a breath and go, oh, are we practicing any form of self-care? And I can honestly say I was definitely very, very guilty in the last couple of weeks of not demonstrating any self-care. So I came into this flat and was determined. So I came in on the Monday, and my little girl's birthday was on the Saturday, and I was determined it would look like a home. And so the massive wall of pictures and things that you see behind me, I did all of that in that first week. And didn't sleep, and wasn't really looking after myself, but I achieved what I said I was going to do, which was have it look like a home for her birthday, and then layered in Christmas. And I didn't stop, and I kept going, and I thought I'll be fine. I can pick this piece up. And then sometimes life has a way of telling you need to slow down. So for me, mine was I wasn't slowing down. I was trying to do too much. I'd got myself probably a little bit overwhelmed and distracted. Wasn't paying attention, tripped over the trunk of a tree whilst doing the walking challenge that I'm doing for Parkinson's. And the moment I went face first onto the floor, it took a minute for me to go, okay, what's this telling me? And a lot of that was to take a step back and reevaluate what was really important to get done in this period, that really was going to make a difference and was going to matter, and to start to think intentionally about that balance.
I'm so sorry that you tripped and fell. I can imagine just seeing you there. I actually tripped and fell as well a few weeks ago. But I wanted to ask you, what was the date that you moved? Do you remember? I'm wondering if it's the same date.
So we moved on the 25th of November.
Okay, and I moved on the 20th, so we're right in the same.
Yeah.
So when you think about setting boundaries, as you know, this is a course that I teach, setting boundaries and asking permission. For some people, like last night I was teaching the class, it's a concept that people can understand. If someone comes too close to you, they're literally breathing down your neck, you can understand that. Anyone can pretty much understand that they've invaded your space and there's a boundary of how close you get to someone. But people don't often understand what it's like to set a boundary with other people or set a boundary for your schedule, or there's many ways that we can look at setting boundaries. When you think about it as a coach, as a mentor, what does that mean to you to set a boundary?
Oh, great question. I love that question. So I guess for me, when I'm thinking about setting boundaries, I'm thinking about giving myself a kind of virtual space. So I'll often, like you say, with that great analogy, if somebody invades your personal space, they're getting up too close, that you can feel it. I often refer back to the Dirty Dancing piece, like, in my dance space, your dance space, you're in mine. So it would be really kind if you could just take one step back. But for me, the setting boundaries we're talking about here is those virtual boundaries, and they can feel much harder to set. But just like the physical boundary, when somebody steps into it, we have similar feelings when we have people stepping into our virtual boundary. We start to feel overwhelmed. We start to feel like, actually, we've got to do what they want because we're being pushed into that. And we start to find things that were important to us are being pushed further down the priority list because we're now not being in control of ours. And it can be really hard. I found it particularly difficult as a lifelong people pleaser to set healthy boundaries that allowed me to go, yeah, I can empathize with you. I can point you in the right direction, but I can't solve everybody else's problems and still survive because I'm one single human being too, and I've got all these other responsibilities. As you said, I'm a mum, I've got a business, I've got friends, I've got family. I've got lots of hats to, as we all have, that I need to make sure are spinning. And the one for me that I hadn't included in that part for far too long was myself, and the fact that I needed to take time to fill the cup back up. I use the saying often, you can't fill from an empty cup. And I'd find myself sharing that with clients, being able to help them understand the importance of that healthy boundary, and then hearing it myself and going, great advice, Kim, you're not taking it. Because it felt uncomfortable to take that, to suddenly say, no, I'm really sorry, I can't do that. Or when my calendar was already booked up because I'd got other things on that I was doing, not to go, oh, let me see what I can change. Because I was dreadful for doing that. Let me see what I can change. Let me see what I can change. And then I'd be, up at 2 a.m. trying to wrap stuff because that was the only time that I'd eked out of my day that I could actually now focus on doing something else. And initially, when you first set those boundaries, other people can find it very uncomfortable because they're used to you saying yes. And so it's also having the courage. Some people would say confidence. For me, it was the courage to stick to the fact that no, that is my boundary, and it's fair. That I say that is virtually where I want to go around. Where for example, as I've got my own platform, and before, although I say to guests, I really need to have all the information 48 hours before to prepare me to be able to give you the best interview experience, create all the artwork, etc. I was very bad a few years ago at the fact that if they dropped it 20 minutes before, suddenly dropping everything and starting to try and pull it all together, and now I've realized I wasn't helping them or me, because they didn't have the best experience. I didn't have the best experience. And actually, instead, setting that boundary and saying, no, I'm really sorry, because you haven't given it as we're going to have to reschedule, has meant that the whole experience is much improved for me and for them.
Good for you. I'm so proud of you for sticking to your boundaries. That's not an easy thing to do, especially if someone is booked in for an interview and you're expecting X, Y, and Z, but it's your platform and you have the right to run it any way that you want. So I really acknowledge and applaud you for that. That's wonderful. And something else that you said I want to touch on as well. When we do set boundaries, other people are uncomfortable because they're so used to us being the way that we are. And I know for myself, it seems like every day there's something that is not going right. And it's not a little thing, it's like a big thing. And so for me, setting boundaries with myself means I am not going to be an emotional wreck. I'm going to look for the solution. And I will give myself, and I've said this before, I'll give myself 10 minutes for the pity party. And that's it. And then it is, what is the solution? And sometimes the solution is difficult to find because we're so emotional. We're emotional because it's not going our way, because we didn't expect it, because we have a plan and we stick to the plan. And so every day, I was just describing this to someone, since I moved, I still have no heat. There's no heat in here. My feet are numb. But, I'm doing what I can do to get it resolved. But that doesn't mean that I'm screaming and yelling and crying and freaking out and going down to the management office. I'm not doing any of that, whereas other people would be doing that. But I've set a boundary for myself that I will conduct myself as a lady.
I love that. I'm so sorry that you still don't have heating. I know we were in the same boat, weren't we, the week we moved in? Because at first I had no electricity for two days. And then when the electricity came back on, I realized I'd had no heating for 3 days, but I just thought that was because the electricity was on. So had one, and it's hard, isn't it? And you kind of like look at those parts and go, actually, I can't choose what's happening, but I can choose how I behave. And I love that you've made that choice and that you're holding yourself to that, which is, okay, I'm going to do the things I can control. I'm going to allow myself to have the messy emotion, but then I'm going to allow myself to hold myself to account to not stay there, because I think we do. I mean, we know that our emotional brain responds 24 times faster. So our first response is how it makes us feel, and our reaction to that. But I love that you kind of do that and then go, okay, but what can I do to solve it? What steps can I take? And for me, one of the things that I do in that moment is, because I know that these things have often happened to me, and I'm often the emotional where I go, is I ask myself the question, what's actually happening and what have I made it mean? Because very often what I'm responding to is the what I've made it mean, which is the layered on frustrations of everything else. It's a delay I didn't expect. I've got this to add on to the list that was already inappropriately long for the amount of time that I'd got. I've got all of these things and go, but that's not this one's fault. All of that was true before this thing happened. So this thing, yes, is a frustration. Does it become a greater priority than one of the others? Is there something you can take off the list? Is there something that you could do differently? And it just allows you to kind of reframe it into a calmer space. That means you're now not eating up precious energy, winding yourself up about something.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe it's a practice skill. It's something that doesn't come naturally to everyone. And I'll just give another example. In the building where I live, my car's in the garage, and there are two big columns. So there's two cars that can fit between the columns. So I was the second one. And after a zillion other things that weren't going right, I sideswiped my car against the column because the other person was parked partly on my side. So I get out of the car and I look and I say to myself, I cannot believe this. And I wanted to be mad at the other person who, by the way, was in her car with the motor off. She must have been on the phone. So she got out of the car and I don't know her, but I'm thinking in my mind, why didn't you park but it was my fault because I'm the one who hit the pole. So I said nothing to her. And I said to myself, okay, you hit the pole. It's going to cost you money now. And that's unfortunate, but what are you going to learn from this? So what I learned was I wasn't going to park in that space anymore. So I called the office and I said, I want to park on the right side of the pole instead of the left. So I'm going to move to the space next door. And they said, okay. And now I have no problem. So I got the car fixed yesterday, and I was upset about spending the money, but I thought I'm not going to beat myself up. So that's a boundary. I made a mistake. I'm rectifying the mistake. And now I'm not going to do it again because I'm really paying attention to, now I'm on the other side of the pole, and it's a lot easier to gauge as opposed to the passenger side.
I love that. I'm so sorry that you can't, but I love that you took that, something that went wrong and kind of, and then went, well, hold on, what can I do different? One, I can change some things to allow that. And then I can do something differently. You know, I had an example last week on the school run, and it's a quite a narrow street where the school is, and you can imagine there's cars parked either side, and people, you know, struggling trying to get through, and we all know that. So, you know, I always think, well, let's just sit patiently. There's not a lot that we can do. But on this particular day, I pulled out into the road. And two parents had immediately pulled in behind me. So we were now in a little convoy of three, and somebody coming the other way just kept coming. And I was like, right. And they were clearly very angry, and they were getting angrier that I wasn't reversing. But I was like, well, I've got two people literally in my boot, so I can't reverse because there's nowhere to go. I can't go either side because there's a parked car. And they were getting more and more angry. And Scott, my little girl, was in the car. And she was like, Mummy, that they're really cross. And I said, I appreciate that they're cross, but right now, until somebody behind me, I've put my reverse lights on so they can see that I need to do something. But until these two people work out what it is that we're doing, then I can't go anywhere. So it doesn't really matter how angry the person is at the front. There's not a lot we can do. And the whole thing only lasted a couple of minutes. Eventually, the people behind did realize what was happening, and they reversed down so that I could reverse down and the person could come past. But when they came past, they were still really angry and decided it was my fault. So they had a little bit of a rant. And I just said, I said nothing, and we carried on. And Scott was like, Mummy, why didn't you say anything? I said, do you think it would have added any value? They weren't angry with me. They were angry with themselves because they were late for the pickup and they got stuck trying to get there. I'd already got you. You were already safe and you were in the car. I can understand what they must have been feeling to be late. And therefore, telling them that actually there was nothing I could do wasn't what they wanted to hear. It wasn't going to solve the problem they'd created for themselves. And all it was really going to do was make me cross and angry if I chose to join them in that space. But you're so right. It is that learned behavior, which is, I understand that what you're angry at is not what's happening. You're angry at the something else that sits behind it. But this is where we sometimes we get disconnect, and therefore, you know, I try and set myself that boundary that says, don't respond to your perceived misjustice, because they weren't angry at you anyway. They were angry at something else. So allow yourself to be content in the fact that you couldn't have done anything else, and your intentions were honorable, and don't add to an escalation.
Exactly. And you know what you did? You gave grace. You gave them grace, which I wish people would embrace, this concept of being kind, putting yourself into other people's shoes and seeing what that experience is like. So you actually prevented this from escalating and becoming something that could be out of control, because people's nerves are so short right now that one little comment, there's a movie with Russell Crowe, I can't think of what it's called, and he gets cut off by someone on the road and he ends up going completely out of his mind. I mean, it's an exaggeration, I hope. So thank you to you for giving grace to those people. I had a situation yesterday when I was going to work out, and I'm not going to say the name of the company, everyone knows where I go. And the coach was demonstrating an exercise, and I'm saying this in a humble way, but just a fact. I've taken more classes than almost all the coaches put together at this location. But anyway, I noticed during the demonstration that she was not doing it correctly. And because I've done it so many times, she was facing the wrong way. And I immediately wanted to say something, but I thought, it's not my place. I'm just a client. So then when it was actually time to do the class and do the exercise, I thought, okay, she's going to get it right and instruct the correct way, but she didn't. And it was supposed to be for your back and it was for your chest. So after the class, I thought to myself, I've got to go up and tell her. I've got to tell her. So I saw the studio manager walking over to talk about something else. And I thought, well, I'm not going to go and tell her in front of her boss, right? And
Yeah.
then I thought, you know what, let me just sit with this for 5 minutes. And I thought to myself, why is it that I feel I need to go and share this? And I thought, well, first of all, because if it's back day and we're doing a chest exercise, for people who don't know, they might think, oh, this is the exercise. No, it's not the exercise for your back. But then I thought, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to ruin her day and go up and say something. Eventually somebody will point it out, maybe a coach or something, but it's not my place to say anything. I had a great workout. She did a great job coaching. So that was my boundary. But in the past, I would have definitely gone up and said something. You know how to do this? No. So that to me was setting a boundary that I was giving her grace and also giving myself grace too.
I love that, because sometimes we do, and I love what you said about sitting with it for a moment, because I think that's the thing we don't always do is sit with it for a moment. And for me, you know, one of my ways of setting boundaries, and I remember it being in a very difficult moment in a relationship, and things were quite fraught, and the person, you know, rang me up, and I really wasn't in the right place. And normally I would have gone, well, you're going to have to carry on with it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to. So actually, I'm ever so sorry. Right now is not working for me. So I just need 10 minutes. I'm going to go away. I'm going to have a word with myself and get myself in a good place. And then I'll call back and we can carry on the conversation. And they were like, why is that? I said, because right now I'm really struggling to find a response I'm going to be proud of. And therefore I need to take myself away from that situation. And that was a learned boundary setting, because before, what I would do is I'd stay in the situation, do my best to get through it, getting more and more frustrated that I was in that position and wasn't being able to deal with emotionally how it was making me feel. And then I realized actually I had the capability and the right to say, look, we need the conversation, but we don't need it right this minute, right now. Give me 10 minutes so that I can be in the right state, that this can be a positive conversation to help us deal with the problem that we need to resolve.
Absolutely. You know, you have such a great thought process, the way that your mind works. And I know that you share that with your clients. I want to just do a quick segue. Who are the clients that you are typically able to help? And they're in corporate as well as individuals, yes?
Yeah, so I deal with corporates, business owners. If somebody asked me this earlier today, you know, what's the thing that you do? And I said, well, I guess what I do is help people to become comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. Because if you can learn to give yourself and others grace, then even the most uncomfortable conversation that you've got or you've been putting off can be something that you can do effectively and with relative ease. It is about learning that skill, about getting comfortable in that uncomfortable space.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you know, I think a lot of the work that you do and some of the work that I do have overlays, because in teaching people to set boundaries, it's also part of learning how to respect yourself and respect other people. And I think one point that I just want to make is that when you're setting a boundary, it might feel awkward, it might feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, you're actually giving a gift to the other person, because what you're basically saying is, I don't have the capacity to do X, Y, and Z at the time. I could tell you that I can. I could tell you that I'll give it a go, but I'm not going to give you my best, and you deserve the best. But people have a hard time hearing that because they feel rejection. So can you talk to us a little bit about what is the underlying root cause of rejection or feeling rejection?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, our biggest fear is that we've been a burden on somebody, or that they don't care about us enough to do that. And many years ago, when I was a team leader, we did an exercise, and you had to write on a piece of paper your name and pass it on in this room. And everybody had to write one thing that they really admired you, thought was your strength, and one thing that they thought was an area you could work on, and they had to sign their name. So you imagine it comes back and you've now got 30 pieces of feedback, 15 of things you do well and 15 of things you don't do so well. And I remember one particular brand new team leader had put on theirs, the thing that I did well, always really helpful. Thing I didn't do well, wasn't sure I was always listening. And my immediate response was, I don't do that, followed by, oh my goodness, I can see why you think I do. And I went up to her and she was like, oh, you're really mad with me. I was like, I'm not. I need to explain to you what's happening. I said, so when you come over, I'm very conscious of the fact that you are new and you need support. But sometimes in that moment, I really need to finish what I'm doing because it was for a client or it's for another team member who is dealing with a client, so it needs to be done. But because I don't want you to feel like you're not really important to me, instead of saying, could you just give me 2 minutes while I finish this so I can give you my full attention, I instead look at you as if I'm actually going to be answering and my brain is still trying to solve how am I going to do the other things. So if it works for you, what we'll do moving forward is if that happens again, I'll share with you that I just need a couple of minutes to finish. And you'll know that's not because I don't want to be there to support you, but because I want to be there to support the customers and that as well. And then I can give you my undivided attention. And if you catch me not doing that, ask me the question, Kim, are you listening? And therefore I'll know I'm in a moment where I've not shared with you what's really going on in my world. And we went on to be great friends, because actually once we explain to people why we're going to say no, and it's because we want to give them the best, that's often the bit we don't do. It's like, oh, I'm really sorry, I can't do that. Instead of saying, look, actually, I really can't do that because it would mean I couldn't do X, Y, Z that I've already agreed to do for somebody else, and that doesn't feel fair and equitable. Or I couldn't do that well in the time allotted, which means you'd get something substandard, and I don't want you to get only a little bit of me. I want to give you my undivided attention and get you the best solution that I can. So I think sometimes people are fearful because they don't know the reason behind why you're saying no or why you've set the boundary. And if we share that, in my experience, all conflict comes down to misunderstanding, miscommunication, or misinformation. And it's because we don't share enough of the why, because we don't like saying no. So we say no quickly to get it over with, and then we kind of move over here and hope for the best. Instead of saying, look, I hate to say no to you. However, to ensure I was doing it to the absolute best of my ability and ensuring you get the best outcome, I'm going to have to say, I can't do that time, but I can do here, here, or here. Do any of those work for you? Because then you're not really saying no to the piece that's important to them, which is the help. You're just changing the timeline within which that help's delivered to ensure that they get the best help they can.
So well spoken, so well put. Thank you for sharing that. And I think something else that comes to mind is when we say no, or not now, or I can't do it now, but I can do it, we're also practicing self-restraint. And I think that is something that is difficult because we're in a world where emotions run high. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the television and watch mainstream news, and the world is coming to an end, it appears. And people are really pitted against one another because some people are pro this and against that, et cetera. And so it's tempting to go down that rabbit hole where you're going to negotiate with someone about what they're thinking and try to get them to change their mind or try to prove that but by practicing self-restraint and saying, no, I'm not going there. For example, holiday dinners. There's bound to be some kind of discourse at some holiday table over the next couple of weeks because someone's going to bring up something that's really going to trigger someone else or irk someone else. And then it's tempting to go down that path. Even as an observer, I've seen this where it's actually two people who are engaged in the conversation and a third person is witnessing it and then wants to jump in to do something or say something. And I love The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I started watching it from the beginning. And there's an episode just recently where it's between two women and this third woman gets herself all involved and takes it to a whole nother level. Then a fourth woman starts arguing. And I thought to myself, this is unbelievable because the temptation was there and they took it. And as a result of it, as a viewer watching, you lose respect. I lost respect for the third person and the fourth person because why were they butting into this conversation, which, by the way, should it be taking place at a dinner table? Probably not, but it is reality TV. So I would also encourage people, as you get ready to meet with your families, or maybe you have the company parties, whatever is going on, maybe take the 6-second pause to think about, what is it? Is it necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? What are the 3 things?
So I always say to my little girl, the lens you've got to pass things through is it kind? Is it honest? And does it add value? Because if it's not going to add value, that can pull you back, or it might not be kind. And I think, often we say, it's pick your battles. I disagree with that. It's pick your battlefield. Because choosing the battlefield wisely will improve the opportunity for you to get over the challenge that you're facing. So, for example, if there is friction between you and another family member, choosing to discuss that in front of the whole family at a holiday dinner is not going to give either one of you the right environment for which you can actually find a resolution. So it might be that conversation needs to be had. It might be that discussion needs to happen, but by giving yourself the grace to choose a different battlefield, you'll be able to do it in a much less damaging, much less emotionally draining manner.
Thanks for sharing that. That is so true. So I think when we are looking at setting boundaries and balancing work, first of all, this week is a week many people take off. Next week, people take off as well. Of course, I'm not taking off. I don't know if you are or not, but so when you have a family, you have a beautiful daughter, how do you balance when you're going to set aside time, first of all, for yourself, for self-care, and then for her, and then for the 2 of you, versus clients saying, hey, I'm available next week. I actually am taking some time for business. So I'm going to be available for an interview. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, it's tempting, but I've already committed to something else. So how do you stick to those boundaries?
Oh, great question. And such one to challenge, Dr. Jacqueline. So I've kind of, this year, I've committed to the fact that I'm taking next week off. And it's all about time with family and friends, and all of that, all of those things, because as you know, earlier this year we lost my dad, so this is the first holiday period without him. It's a big one for all of my family, my mum and everybody, and I want to be there to support. But what that's meant is I've done extra hours for the last 2 or 3. I've also just handed in all of the stuff that I promised would be done in the month of December to my clients for them to be able to review. And then so that I could give that balance. And then I said, look, if it's really, really urgent, feel free to WhatsApp me. And the reason I've done that is people then have to think about, actually, is this really urgent? Because she's been clear, she's going to be back on this day and she'll help us then. But if it absolutely cannot wait, then of course, reach out in an emergency. So again, it's a bit of that setting a boundary. It's like, I'm actually taking a week off to be with my little girl because that's family. And this is the reason why. I understand emergencies happen, so I'm not going to be available for work, but I will be available to help an emergency. Of course I will. But what I have done to ensure I'm not slowing you down is all the stuff that I said would get completed in December, I've now given to you. So it's yours, ready for review before we can implement. So is there anything else that I can do to make sure that you're set up for success whilst I'm in the holidays? And that's been a really busy week this week for getting work stuff done, which then comes into a really busy few days in the next couple of days, because we have a couple of family traditions, Scarlett and I. So one of our traditions is we always make home baked goods together the weekend before Christmas. It's part of one of our gratitude things, spending time together, and then we take those gifts to friends, family, and neighbours in the run up to Christmas. And my little girl is a one of life's natural givers. So she always has a massive list. So, I've already got on the list, we need to be doing pate and chutney and jam and brownies and cookies, as well as all the other bits. So I was like, well, I'll just be clear on my days. If you want me to do these bits, these are the days that are available to you. If there are emergencies, because I think sometimes that's the problem we have in the balancing work and setting the boundaries, is we don't create the balance which says, if it's an emergency, I will be there, of course. But if it's not an emergency, then I will be back here, and this is when I can deal with it. And therefore, it allows you to have better conversations. So I did that earlier in the year when I went on holiday abroad with my little girl, and I was very clear, with all my clients and everybody I helped, the same thing. Only one person did WhatsApp me, having got my out of office reminder of the fact that I was away and be back on a particular day. And so I took the call. I did the bit that they wanted me to do, and then I actually had the conversation with them of, could I just ask though, was this really an emergency? And they were like, well, actually, no. I said, okay, I didn't think it was. It was just, I assumed it must have felt like an emergency for you to make that choice. Because I think that's sometimes the other bit we have to do is we've set the boundary, same as I do with my little girl. If I set a boundary and say, if you do this, this is the consequence, and then do nothing about it, there's no point setting a boundary in the future, because you've just said, actually, it was a serving suggestion. So for me, probably one of the number one things about setting boundaries is if somebody steps over it, you have to have that conversation so that you might still have helped them. And I did, but they have said they wouldn't make the same call again. They'd wait for the following week.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that example. That's really relevant. And I think it also comes down to trust, because now that trust is broken because you went out of your way, you have an agreement, a commitment, and then the person says, you know what, actually not. But here's another thing. Maybe it's not intentional when we do that. Maybe it's emotionally charged. And again, if we could get our arms around controlling our emotions, because it's like that domino effect where if I'm out of control, then I take it out on the next person, then you take it on, and so on and so on and so on. And sometimes I know it feels like things are an emergency, like not having heat. It's against the law, by the way, not having heat. But I found a way to deal with it until it actually gets addressed. And I want to give just a quick personal example. My hair is rather long right now. It's pretty long. And I've had people who I care about who have gone out of their way to tell me how much they don't like it and how I'm too old. And one person said, you see someone from behind and they look amazing, and then they turn around and you see them from the front and you think, what the? And she said, that's you, actually. So I've gotten questioned, are you getting a cut? When are you getting cut? So I went to the stylist, the beauty salon, and I got a call from this person, and she said, did you get it cut? And I said, you know what, I've decided I'm not going to talk to you about my hair anymore. I've decided not to get it cut because I like it. Well, but you're too old. And I said, I'm not having this conversation. So we can be friends or not friends. But if you decide to bring up my hair again, I'm going to have to tell you that we're not going to talk about it. And if it happens numerous times, I'm going to have to say we can't be friends, because for some reason, my hair length is impacting you, which really probably has to do more about you than it does with me. And that was hard. That was really hard for me to do, to stand up for myself, because then I started thinking, well, maybe I am too old. And then I'm asking the stylist, am I too old? So it starts like playing with your mind, and it's so unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. It says more about them than it is about you. There's something in them that's being triggered, but it then makes you start to, question it for yourself. I had similar when I decided that I'd let my natural grey grow in. And I've had people who are just like stunned and went, you've got quite a young face. I was like, well, my face isn't going to change. Well, my face is my face. My hair's my hair. It shouldn't really matter. And it made me wonder, okay, what's going on in your world that makes this so important? Because if somebody else changes their hair length or hair color or hairstyle, it doesn't really impact me. I mean, it might be beautiful, in which case I'll share with them. It looks beautiful. If actually I look and go, oh, I've seen better, then back to my 3, is it kind? Is it honest? And does it add value? That's no value to them. For me to go, I preferred it where you had it before, particularly on those occasions where somebody had long hair and they've cut it short. When people feel the need to go and go, oh, it was much better long. You're like, great, what can they do with that information? For at least another 4 or 5 years, nothing, while they wait for it to grow. So it's adding nothing of any value to them. So it would be really good if we could learn that self-control to not feel the need to share that.
Exactly. I love what you just said. And I think it comes down to oversharing. And a client said this to me last night, that she has friends who are continuously oversharing information, giving every single perspective about everything she's doing. And I said, how do you handle it? And she said, sometimes I just put the phone down and I let them go on. And I said, what if you were to address it? And she said, I'm afraid I'd lose a friend. And I said, what kind of friendship do you have then if it's based on this rocky foundation? And by the end of the conversation, she said she got the confidence to go. And I wasn't saying go and do it, because when we give advice, by the way, that can fly back in our face. Well, you go and do it. So we have to be accountable for our own behavior and the decisions that we make. So I think as we come to the end of this enjoyable episode, when we think about setting boundaries and also asking permission, by the way, is now a good time. Do you have 15 minutes? How would the next hour look on your schedule? That also shows respect. And I think once we incorporate these techniques, if you will, into our life, into our conversations, people won't like it initially, but then they'll respect you and realize, you know what, her time is valuable and she does care about me, and she's carving out this time that's specifically just for me. So how do you feel when you hear me saying that, Kim?
No, I think that makes total sense. And I've got an example literally just before we came on the show. I was interviewing an amazing lady for my own platform, who I'm delighted to say is also going to come and share her incredible story with us here on USA Global TV and Radio. But I knew when I started that conversation that I'd got a finite amount of time, because I needed to come here because we're live and I needed to be on. So before we even started our conversation, I explained that. I said, look, we've got, our interview is going to be half an hour. I've actually only got 50 minutes end to end, because I always book in more time so you can get to know them beforehand and again at the end. I normally wouldn't go back to back. Today, it just so happens that there's something happened in my calendar and it meant that that's happened. So I've got plenty of time to do the interview, but it may feel, once we finish the show, that we don't have enough time to have a proper catch-up chat at the end. I hate that when that happens. It's not because I don't want that. So I'm just forewarning you, and I would love the opportunity to book in a virtual coffee for us to have that conversation afterwards. And she was lovely about it, hugely respectful. At the end, when we were still chatting, she was like, no, you need to go. I'm conscious of your time. I was like, yeah, absolutely, we'll follow up. So we went from what could have been a very awkward and potentially damaging impact on that initial start of a relationship to it being really positive, because I set the boundaries at the start and explained the why, so that actually there was no opportunity for somebody to feel that they'd been disvalued.
Once again, you always have the best advice and direction, coaching, mentoring for people. So thank you. We're going to pull up your LinkedIn. And if somebody wants to come onto your platform, how do they go about doing this?
So if you've got a story you want to share, then get in touch with me. You can either find me on most social media as Kim Adele Randall or Kim Adele 10, or email me directly, kimadele@AuthenticAchievements.com, or check out AuthenticAchievements.com, which is where you'll find the podcast and all of the ways that you can get in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And for people who are listening after the show on a podcast platform, can you just go ahead and spell your name, please?
Of course. So it's Kim-Adele, and then the surname is Randall. So Randall.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you a very happy, beautiful holiday, and we'll see you again. I guess it'll be in the new year, right? The first week of January, or is it? I think it is.
No, I think it is the first week of January. I think we just tip into there. Until then, Dr. Jacqueline, wishing you the happiest festive period, and for everybody listening and watching, wishing you and yours a happy, healthy, and joyous holiday time.
Thank you, my dear. I'll be talking with you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Please do go over to LinkedIn and follow Kim Adele. Please go to her website, Kim Adele Randall. Also, you can go to AuthenticAchievements.com. And I just want to announce we have a new show that is coming up. In case you have been with us since the beginning, you'll notice that I haven't been hosting a lot of shows recently. And I've been doing a lot of production and working on getting us an app on for our phones, our devices. And I thought, I'm going to get back behind the camera. And the show is called Creating a World of Possibilities. So if you are a humanitarian, if you are someone who's doing something to better this world, please do go ahead and go to our website, usaglobaltv.com, book your session. And I just want to share, sometimes people are booking in meetings with me. If you want to be a guest, you don't have to book a meeting. Just go to the actual show, which, for example, is this one, Creating a World of Possibilities, and go ahead and book yourself in. So I look forward to meeting you there. All right, we're going to close out now, and our next show is coming up. It's the Mallorca Connection. So please do subscribe to our channels, USA Global TV and Radio, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.